have been here for a while will definitely know that. Excited to be talking today about what we're going to be talking about. So as we just open it up, I'm going to give it some time to let some people get in here and make sure we get to the number that we are supposed to be at. And then we will get ourselves off and running here. So we'll give it about another minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then we'll get going. I do believe, and Damien, correct me if I'm wrong here, this thing will be recorded. We will be able to share that out. So if you do have to jump or you are on the phone just calling in, you will be able to see everything that we're going to show here in a little while. All righty. Give it another couple minutes and we will get ourselves going. Hopefully everybody is having a good Tuesday. Hopefully this makes it a little bit better. We're shooting for not making it worse. That's the goal. All right. All right, well, we'll get ourselves going here with kind of the introduction as people are continuing to kind of funnel in. Again, my name is JP Cahalan. I also go by John, go by other things depending on what type of day you're having and how you take this. But excited to talk to you today about enterprise data and how to leverage that through the XOI platform. A lot of you out there that have been on the XOI platform for a while have seen the evolution of this tool from the focus on pictures and videos and notes to the evolution of adding in different step types that allow us to get different types of data. I'm going to be talking us through today how workflows that allow for capturing simple actions from technicians tell a much bigger story about what is happening. And as you think about organizations that are structured in a way that have kind of, let's call it, a parent organization or, a multi kind of level organization where you have a parent and then maybe a bunch of operating companies or business units that are their own brands or their own logos, or you're a large organization that has multiple locations, probably run into situations where everything is not always consistent across the board. We're going to be talking about how XOI can actually streamline that consistency and what that does today. So I'm going to start by actually sharing my screen and walking us through a quick presentation kind of what this does and how it all comes together. I'm also going to be diving into a lot of the data that is being pulled. Now, what the data you're going to see is completely de-identified, and it's a collection of different organizations that are using very similar kind of steps and workflows. So you're going to see this is real data from the field, but this is what can be gathered. This is what can be accessed. Coming out of kind of walking through the presentation piece of this, I'm going to jump into the actual desktop component of XOI, show a couple of simple workflows that allow us to get this type of data. And then I'll finish up by obviously jumping into the mobile app and just showing what the technician experience looks like to show how simple and easy that is as well. So we'll get ourselves going here. I'm going to go ahead and hit the play button, get us into the actual presentation. We kind of start with Industry 4.0. Some of you may have seen this slide. It's something that gets utilized in the XOI world quite a bit. Everything in the world is being connected. We are all living and dying with how things are operating within one another and integrations that are passing information from one to the other. And this is great for a lot of different companies, a lot of different ways to kind of enhance and streamline automation. As we kind of continue to go further into this, one of the things that gets captured within all of that is data. And as we look at what Industry 4.0 can do in the field service space, we've traditionally not been able to get there because there has never been a uniform collection of information. It has always been, we do it this way over here, but we don't do it this way over here. We got this piece that does this and this piece that does this, and it's never in a spot where it needs to be, where you can actually collate that data and tell a larger and bigger story. That is the problem as it exists. We have these isolated silos, very limited visibility across the board, and especially across large organizations where you have multiple brands or multiple logos or multiple locations. This gets us all into a little bit of trouble because one of the things that we realize is that while we can't collect this data in a uniform way, it leads us to kind of act in what we historically always thought was the problem, or what we historically thought was the best way to go about something. This creates this assumption that, hey, it's still doing this, or this is still the way it works. A lot of that, and I think back to my previous construction life, a lot of that comes from it was very painful. And I know everybody out there knows that sense. It's like, yeah, this happens all the time, but it may not happen all the time. It just may be very painful. And that's why it sticks out in your mind. That's why you remember it. So the ability for us to be able to say, okay, I get it, it's painful, but how often is it actually happening? Is it just something that happens on occasion and it's really, really powerful in pain? Or is it something that consistently is really nagging at us and we need to change our approach? That's what this webinar and all this data is all about. So as I get myself a little bit further into this presentation, I wanted to show this slide as kind of a visual of how things occur. These are logos I pulled off the internet, so it's not anybody's information or anything like that. But think of these, every one of these little circles as individual companies. They could be individual locations, individual brands, whatever they may be. And then coming off of that, you see these arrows coming up where it says siloed data. When you guys are collecting across multiple locations or multiple brands, data that is siloed, nobody can learn from one another. We're keeping everything in a single vein. And these arrows going up are the process that evolves within your businesses. It is a technician running a call or your quote process or your safety process or anything that it would be. And the arrow just continues because, as you know, your business just continues and that is how you operate. You don't necessarily have the ability to reach out and simply learn from the location next to you or the business next to you. But when we think about using XOI to help us capture that data and tell a larger story, it looks like this. Allowing XOI to operate in the silos of the data inside of your business to capture pertinent things. I'll be the first one to say it doesn't have to capture everything, but capturing things that can help you better understand what is going on in your business. As you can see, we're still starting right here with the arrows going up, but as they're going up in the business process that you're implementing XOI, whether that be maintenance or quotes or safety or regular service calls, we can collect data. We can allow your team to better understand what's happening. And then through the XOI process, we can actually surface that data back to the local offices or the individual brands to allow them to better understand exactly what the technician is experiencing and how often the office is having to deal with certain scenarios. Because those things are going to tell us a much larger and broader story about what we should do. And that ultimately makes us ask the only question I'm going to ask today. And you're probably asking yourself right now, why should I care? Why should you care about collecting this and putting something like this in process? Because data drives insights and insights drive change. That's the simplicity of this. And that's what the next slides are going to show. And what I'm going to be talking about is, again, real world information that was captured by a technician hitting a yes or no button inside of XOI. So I want to be very clear that what we're about to embark on here. I'm not talking about these fancy workflows that are asking for people taking videos and we're listening to what we're saying and using our NLP and all that. I'm talking about simple answers to yeses and nos that tell a broader and a larger story for you as a business. It allows you to see what you don't know. This is a perfect example. We're going to go through a bunch of slides that look like this. Again, a lot of people inside of XOI ask very similar questions. And to be very clear, we're not saying that one organization who's not affiliated with another is going to be able to share that information. Because you have multiple locations, because you have multiple brands, you're still only seeing your stuff that you're connected to inside your environment. But think about the question like this. Are there any safety concerns found on site? The answer to that question across people that have access to this and have done this, 12%. Are there any recommendations to increase efficiency or extend useful life? This is a question that is not always leading to a quote. It's something that gets asked on service calls and maintenance calls. 17% of the time, the answer there is yes. I'm not going to run through all the things that exist here because we're going to kind of talk about certain ones of these. One being the safety concern. I know we all talk about pre-test safety plans, and any of you that sat in meetings with me know that I used to pencil whip mine back when I was in the field. But if 12% of the time there is a concern being flagged by a technician, we need to get a way of being able to get that information to the appropriate people internally to have conversation with a customer, because 1 out of 10 times at least, this is happening. So this should allow us to rethink, all right, are we missing stuff? And are we taking the appropriate action? If every 10 calls our techs go on, one of them we find something, Let's put a plan in place that builds consistency in the communication to the tech internally and to the customer, so we're not having to handle things on an individual way. Then we get to, are there any recommendations to increase efficiency and extend useful life? Your technicians are very intelligent people. There is always something that if it was their unit, they would do. We need to figure out what those are. This is 1 out of 6 calls they go on, 1 out of 7. They're saying yes to this. Can we expose this information from them simply inside of the XOI app somewhere else and feed that to the team internally to allow the account team, to allow the sales team to reach out to your customers and say, hey, we're not just a service provider. We want to be your partner in building health and safety, and we have an opportunity for you to be more efficient. That's what this allows us to do. We know it happens a lot. Let's try and get the information now to drive more value. Our filter change is part of this maintenance agreement. This question surprised me. I'm going to be honest, when we got the data back, 38% of the time the answer is no. Seems like one of those parts of a maintenance agreement that would exist and live that is more, let's call it, larger in the number of responses that we get. But this is an opportunity for maintenance sales reps and account people to go back and look at increasing that agreement to include this if you choose to. Just by getting the data, exposing the data, it allows us to take a different path and understand things a little bit better. The questions we're going to get here are more driven toward recommendation workflows and kind of quote workflows. Everybody always asks the same stuff. Hey, do we need parts? Do we need cranes? Do we need specialty tools? All these things. You're seeing the answers from real examples living right here. Parts are needed 82% of the time. Cranes are needed roughly 11% of the time. Specialty tools, specialty equipment, 27%. I highlight these numbers because you think it may not always happen that much, but now we're realizing that when we are actually quoting something, it is happening quite a bit. When you think about a crane, I'm not saying people go out and buy cranes, but could you talk to your crane provider? Could you talk to your vendor and say, hey, we know basically the volume that we're going to need based on the information that we get. Is there a way you can reduce a rental rate because you have this data? Do you have the ability to go, capital expense and get a lift? Obviously, we don't want to go buy a crane, but a lift that may get you guys to 80% of what is needed, 40% of what is needed when it comes to lifts. And now you don't have to pay any rental rates. And that just kind of maneuvers through your locations and your businesses. We talk about other things such as, hey, is this recommendation urgent and in need of an immediate quote? Is the unit operating? This type of data, simple yes and no questions getting captured by the tech as they're doing their quote, is telling us that close to 60% of the time, the technician believes this is urgent. 25% of the time, roughly, the unit is not operating. And the technician also believes that 64% of the time, if you take no action, this thing's going to fail. The two on the ends, the urgent and the not operating, it is my personal belief that there should be a separate process that funnels this information to a different kind of protocol. This should not be a traditional quote. This should be something, especially if the unit's not operating, that it is going kind of on a fast track. It is bypassing the line like a child at Disney World that got the fast pass, and they are allowed to go to the front. We get this out, we get it going because the unit is down. But this should allow us to understand where our processes could alter and could change to benefit you guys as an organization and the customer. So these types of insights from simple answers from technicians should drive things internally that allow us to better understand how the business operates and how we can create consistent communication at low lift to you guys as an organization. As we dive a little bit deeper, you see some very simple questions. These came from kind of maintenance workflows, tasking workflows, things like that. Asking, hey, everybody asks, hey, is this thing in good, fair condition? Is this thing operating okay? This, that, and the other. We're getting simple information on this. Fan blades and housing are visually not in good condition, 7.65% of the time. Fan motors not operating well, 6.35% of the time. Does everybody know what to look for in regards to fan blades and housing? Are we qualifying good the same way across the board? When we talk about is the fan motor in good operating condition, are we all testing it the appropriate way? I know that's kind of simple in its nature, but we're starting to expose these things that happen, and they happen probably more frequently than we think. And can we create maybe an easier way when I do have to replace a fan motor that leverages XOI or doesn't to say, hey, this is a fan motor replacement. Maybe I have a very quick workflow that is 3 or 4 steps, and I can fill that out and it goes where it needs to go. And I just eliminated the need for the tech to write a bunch of stuff. This is the type of thing that we could do. This is the type of thing that businesses should be doing, because what we're exposing here are tendencies and trends. If any of you guys are sports fans out there and you remember the Oakland Athletics, or better example, you remember Brad Pitt in the movie Moneyball, it was all driven off of the understanding of statistics and putting yourself in the best position to win. For football fans, you think about the two best at this, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. When they walked up and stood under the center and they were about to snap the ball, they looked at the defense and they knew based on the positioning that this happened 72% of the time or 86% of the time. So they knew whether the play they were doing was going to be successful or not. That is what this data represents. It's the ability for you guys as organizations to make the best decisions you can for your technicians and for your business. As we look at these other questions, again, very simple, very easy. Is the unit showing proper pressures and temperatures? 17% of the time, the answer is no, and this is on maintenance agreements, like maintenance style workflows. So you're telling me 1 out of 6 times we're seeing this. Is our technician digging in and doing additional work on for a maintenance contract that they're not paying for? Is this part of the agreement? Is this an opportunity for us to start building in flex time in our agreements that allow us to cover it, knowing that 1/6 of the time, technician's going to have to dig in, or our customer's probably not going to be happy. We ask questions about heat exchangers. We ask questions about bacterial growth. Maybe 2.73% of the time the answer is yes, is high to you guys. Maybe it's low, but the fact is we now know the answer to that. And so we can prepare for that. Were bearings lubricated on this visit? 1/5 of the time it is being done. Understanding and ensuring that the technicians actually have the tools and the skill set to do all that, to make sure that it's seating it back properly, these types of things that should impact training based on data. That's exactly what this simple yes and no information can do. Now we're getting ourselves into, on the residential side, of some stuff that I think is very, very powerful. It's just things that exist. So for you residential organizations out there, I think that's going to hit home. Does the outdoor unit have a surge protector? Does the indoor unit have a surge protector? Is there a hard start kit on the outdoor unit? Getting this information are things that could be recommended. Now, the same thing can be said on the commercial side as well. Asking, hey, is there an economizer? Are there controls? Are there this? Are there this? But it allows, as an organization, to better understand exactly what is occurring, so we can start to prepare our technicians or our account team or our sales team to know most of the time you run up against this, this is an opportunity to, again, drive value as a provider and be a partner in building health and safety instead of just a service provider who happens to do HVAC. And as we come down here, you're going to see more examples of some very, very good data on the residential side that is talking about, again, operating outside of manufacturer specifications in regards to pressures and temperatures. Knowing this data, being able to dig into this data is going to tell us a lot about where we need to prepare and what we need to prepare our technicians for. And that's what this should do. This information should drive a lot of things in business. It should change and alter how things happen today based on the actual real data of how often things are occurring. It should also drive how we approach our technicians and what we actually focus on and what we start to train to. I know that things are evolving with the equipment as of today. Things are more intelligent, they're smarter, you need to plug into everything, this, that, and the other. But some of the mechanisms are still the same. Is that the same thing that is giving people challenges? Let's get the data and let's better understand it. Next 3 slides I'm going to show you guys is something that we were doing kind of a thought analysis on the XOI side, and this exposing this data. This is a real technician. I changed this technician's name to John Doe. You're going to see on the right side, we looked at all the images that this technician has captured in this technician's lifetime of being on XOI. And we found that this technician sees train 38% of the time. Sees AON next at 8.3. Then you get into the actual models that this technician sees. This technician runs across a YCD 18% of the time. Why is this important? We talk about currency and we talk about proficiency. This technician, based on how many times this technician sees a YCD, probably knows the ins and outs of a YCD. This technician should be somebody who can support others who may be on this. And now we have this data. We understand the most common things this technician sees to be able to allow this technician to either A, grow and start to kind of work on other things to build their skill set and round out who they are as a technician. But also B, we know where to go if somebody else gets stuck on this particular make and this particular model. Here's another technician. As you can see, we got kind of a more diverse operation here. Carrier's at 22, Trane's at 15, Lennox is at 12.8. You can see where the focus is here. It's kind of spread out. This tells me that this technician is probably very well-rounded. I could probably send this tech to work on any manufacturer, just about any model, and they would be perfectly fine. Us understanding this and being able to expose this is going to allow us to see where this technician excels and where they have the opportunity for growth. And here's our final one, just one last one. As you can see, this technician works 50% of the time on Carrier, 11% of the time on York. Not going to say this technician is siloed, but this technician is probably an expert on Carrier 48s. And being able to see that should give us the understanding of where we can, again, allow this tech to grow, send them to maybe different manufacturer trainings if the technician wants to. If not, they want to be an expert in Carrier, by all means, good for them. But this is stuff that, again, never got surfaced before. But because we're taking pictures of data plates, we have this ability to collate all this data. It allows us to see exactly what's happening, not only within the business, but also at an individual technician level. Now, I showed a lot of data there. I talked about a lot of things. I'm actually going to jump into the desktop portion and show you two workflows that can kind of get you this data and how simple they are. But before I do, are there any questions inside of the chat? Anybody have any questions about what we've talked about so far? I'm going to kick open the Q&A. I do not see any there. So I did want to kind of pause after I did all that talking and make sure that we got any of the questions. We do have Damien who's going to be answering them as we go and feeding them up to me. So obviously, if you do have them, please toss them out there. Otherwise, I'm going to get myself out of here and get myself into the desktop portion of XOI. As you guys can see, regular XOI environment. This is my demo environment where I do a lot of stuff. I'm going to jump into the workflows. And you guys are going to see a very, very, very simple one here. And we're going to start with this one as a kind of field lead, repair, replacement style form. Now, again, a lot of you, and I'm going to zoom in here, a lot of you are probably utilizing some form or fashion of this, but you may not be asking all of the questions. I think it's important to kind of say, all right, if we're leveraging XOI, we're sharing these videos, it's driving value on the quotes, but what else can we expose that we can get data from? You're going to see all these are yeses and nos pretty much. Is this thing operating? Is it going to fail if no action's taken? Is this recommendation urgent? Description of the problem, visuals of the issues, are parts needed? Where is this thing shipping to? Is a crane needed? Is there an existing curve? Is refrigerant needed? Simple yes and no questions built throughout this workflow that are going to allow me as a technician to do what I need to do. But then we take XOI a step further and say, okay, after we've done this for so long, we know that 25% of the time, the unit's not operating. Okay, fantastic. Let's dive in here. If this thing is not operating and they say, no, it's not operating, because that's where we are, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it is hitting a different way and going to a different place. You can leverage the auto notifications emails to make sure it goes somewhere else. Think about leveraging, if you're using Gmail or using Microsoft Office or whatever you're using, building in rules and saying, hey, when this question gets answered this way, it needs to go to this inbox. That is a very simple process that leverages XOI's auto notifications on a particular answer that can build in that fast pass style to get you to the front of the line at Disney World. That's how simple that can be, and that's what we can do. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit save there just to make sure that we capture that. And now I'm gonna jump down into the kind of maintenance, general maintenance style of a checklist, right? And again, knowing everybody captures tasking and maintenance and checklists in different ways. I would encourage you this. As you look at the fall coming up, and we're about to get back into, people are hopefully going to get caught up. We're going to get caught up on maintenances and all that. If your maintenance is currently a writable PDF, if it is a hard copy, if it is something that does not allow you to actually get the data, think about bringing it inside of XOI. Because I can ask the same questions. Are there safety concerns? Give me the equipment number, the unit ID, image of the data plate, make, model, serials getting pulled off. Hey, what's the unit condition? I love this one. I'm going to show it to you guys. You can put up to 10 responses, but I probably only need 3. It's good. No visual issues. Fair. Limited visual, limited visual issues such as corrosion, rust, or damage. Poor, excessive. Kind of gives us that kind of understanding. And then I get a bunch of yes and no questions. Hey, is this thing operating with the appropriate pressures and temperatures? Are we in charge of filters on this maintenance? It's all yeses and nos. If your maintenance and tasking is a checklist of did you do this, did you do this? If that is not driving more value for you as an organization to give you tendencies and trends on what your technicians are seeing, I'm going to say this in the kindest way possible. I personally think you are missing the boat in Industry 4.0. Because we can turn around and give the same type of experience to the technicians, the same type of deliverable to the customer, enhanced with images and videos, but we can get you real data as an organization to tell you often, this is this, or this is this, or this happens here. And that's what these yeses and nos can be. For those of you that are sitting out there and wondering, yeah, well, if I brought it in here, could I type into XOI and could I get numeric inputs and all that? With our new step types, you can. I could build out a step that asks for superheat and subcool or so on and so forth. So yeah, we could cover all those bases. But the thing I want you focused on, the thing I want you thinking about is, if I asked you guys today, when your technicians go to do a maintenance, how often are the dampers operating properly when dampers exist? Using XOI, you can get that data. That can be something that gets fed to you. That can be something that you expose. And that should allow you guys to better understand what's happening within your business and training your technicians. Coming down here, obviously we get the, are there any recommendations to increase efficiency or extend useful life? Again, that's probably my favorite question of all time. Simply because these technicians that you guys have are very creative in what they could do and how they could extend things and how they could be more efficiency driven throughout these pieces of equipment and as the building overall. And I think we need to expose that. I think we need to allow the technicians the ability to feed that to you guys and allow them to kind of tell us, hey, here's the things that we could do. So these are the simplicity of these workflows that could allow us to get to this type of value. Now, I'm sure somebody out there is saying, okay, well, you're showing me all this, you're showing me all this. I want to see it from a mobile perspective. I completely agree with you. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my phone. As I pull up my phone, I do want to open it up again to any questions that anybody may have. Please drop that into the chat. I'm going to jump into the mobile. I'll show you exactly what this looks like from the mobile side, and then we'll get ourselves into the deliverable and the output of exactly what exists. So I'll go ahead here. You guys should see my phone coming up here in just about 3 or 4 seconds. And once that comes up, I'll jump quickly into the application. And as we get into the app, I do not have an integration set up inside of my demo environment. So I'm just going to go ahead and tap here, create a new job. And I'm going to label this A, B, and C and hit create, hit add workflow. And we'll get down to we'll do the field, the field lead repair and recommendation first. As I come down here, this is the simplicity of this information for your technicians. RTU6, image of the data plate. And as I continue to roll through this, you will notice that everything is pretty much yeses and nos from here on out. You will also notice a couple of other things. It says instructions right here. I'm going to tap on instructions for, will the unit fail if no action is taken? If yes, please provide additional details. XOI Insight. This is a yes, roughly 60% of the time. There are people that are using XOI in this way out in the world. There are people that are doing exactly this and leveraging the data. If every one of you remembers how XOI steps are built, you can actually provide instructions into the XOI application, traditionally meant to drive people through a process. To say, hey, here's how you do this, little micro learning things, PDF access, things like that. But you can also use that instructions to communicate to the technicians and allow them to understand how often things may exist. You guys can literally go in there and type, hey, based on this, this is what we have. And so now I am providing real-time information to my technicians about how often things occur, so that they have the ability to understand this. Now, on a field quote, do I need to know these things? No, they're all individualized. I probably don't need to know any of this information. But as I get myself down to kind of a maintenance agreement, which I'm going to go ahead and back myself out of and do, you're going to see that I learn a lot of other things just because of this information that exists. Hopefully, this is the type of stuff that you guys can see and leverage as we kind of go through this to understand where our instructional type content exists and how we can provide a feedback loop to the technicians to give the information that they need. I would hit all my yeses and nos. I could capture pictures as I go throughout all the way through. And then once I complete this, here's what it's going to look like on the other end. We're going to see all of these completed workflows, and I completed them previously just so we didn't have to watch me do everything as we went through it. And I'll back out of this just a little bit. We'll open up this one. This is a general maintenance. This is how this looks inside of XOI. Capturing the condition, capturing images to support it, yeses and nos all the way through. As I come up here and we look at what this would actually be, here's the output for your team internally. Seeing all of the yeses and nos, all the information as expected. The confirmational style checklist. You think about providing this type of deliverable to your customer, it follows the same rules that apply with everything else inside of XOI. So if I want to come in here and say, hey, give me the public content, just give me the share link. Here it is. And this is what your customer would see. Your customer gets a really nice deliverable based on, yes, we're doing all the things in our maintenance agreement, and yes, everything is operating as it should. And when it is not, we're going to support it with visual documentation. But I'm also going to be able to take every single one of these answers and start to build a data set that can be provided to you guys to drive value within your business. So again, for those of you that wonder how it all looks and what's the output of this, this is what it could be. But the biggest thing and the most powerful thing can be what this does for you as a business internally and what everything could evolve to as you collect more and more through XOI. Hopefully, this was beneficial for you guys to see kind of the evolution of this data set and what it can become if we're bringing things inside of the XOI platform. For those of you that know me and those of you that have kind of worked with me in the past and for a while, I always say we're not trying to put a square peg into a round hole. If there are certain things that need to operate outside of XOI, they need to operate outside of XOI. I am in complete agreement with that. But if there are certain things that you could bring into XOI and is it a net neutral, a net gain by bringing it in there, or it's even a little bit harder, but it gets us all this data, I would highly recommend that you do it. Things such as safety concerns, pre-test safety plan, job hazard analysis type stuff, recommendations, maintenance, service calls where you ask yes and no questions to get some more granular data so you guys can understand how often things happen. This is exactly what can be exposed. This yes and no data set is all part of kind of I know you guys have all heard about the Journeyman platform with Journeyman and Insights and all that. That's where access to this information as kind of a spit out Excel file exists. So wanted to share this with you. Hopefully you guys find it valuable. Again, I'm not seeing any questions inside of the chat, but if there are, we'll hang out for another 60 seconds or so. And then we'll go ahead and chop this tree down. We said it would be about 30 to 45 minutes. So I think we're right on pace for that one. But I will hush my mouth and make sure that you guys have the chance to actually add any questions. It's tough for me to be quiet right now. All right. Well, we are not seeing anything else come in. So I do want to thank everybody for jumping on. Very much appreciate everybody being here. I do believe this thing is recorded, so I think we're going to be sending it out to all the participants. Damien, if that is not the case, please jump off mute and tell me. If it is the case, you can stay on mute. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a fantastic Tuesday and rest of the week. And as always, if you need anything from the team at XOI, do not hesitate to reach out. Thank y'all so much. Have a wonderful day.